This is the Substation Design Suite Physical for Inventor webinar for above grade and below grade conduit. So I've had past webinars on these subjects, and this is a continuation on this. So this is a little more advanced now again. It's always good to see that advanced type of work. We're going to be approximately 40 minutes of talk and then a Q&A afterwards. Down here, you can see our contact sales guy. He always wants his name on here. He's always hoping to surpass his sales records. This is myself. It's Steve Kaufman. I'm technical consultant at Spatial Business. I've been here for over 5 years now, and I've been with SBS for a few more years than that. Something new to me, I didn't realize we had a events page. For those who don't know, we have an events page, and anytime you want to see what SBS is up to, that is the link. So the purpose I put this link on here, and I made a handout. You may have noticed I have a handout. The reason I have the handout is for these links right there. So this is what we're going to talk about. I'm going to go to the next page. And this is the key thing. We have a structure and an assembly. We can call it an island subassembly. And we're going to show how we can replicate this over in Inventor. We're going to look at some conduits, some actual conduit runs and things like that, and what we can do with Inventor as well. In the handout that you have, these links are active, and you can come into them and you can watch one of the webinars that we did some time ago, or this link as well. So I would suggest you also to look at these as companion webinars. This is an advertisement. This is not the webinar. So we have these two companion webinars that you could review. Key things we're going to talk about is these images. They're going to be brought up, and we will be considering these images when we're looking at our models. I'm going to minimize this. I'm going to go into the first aspect of what we're looking at. We're looking at this island subassembly. I often talk and have island subassemblies. I talk about them. They should be as populated as possible. And you can see with here, if I come down to, I don't know if these, down at the bottom here, you can see I got 136 components in this island subassembly, right? There's 136 components, 847 occurrence just in this one island. So if we're going to populate fully and we're going to look at this type of idea, we want to think that way. If I think that I'm going to add 136 components to a larger model, I'm going to get lost in that model. I can't collaborate. Right here, I can give this model to somebody else to do while I'm working on the general bay, and then we can bring it in later. We have those options by doing this. So we want to populate these. And as always in my island subassemblies, I can come in here and I can have my level of detail. If I'm doing a foundation drawing, a plan view, I can still link my levels of detail across. What I want to talk about as well is, there she goes. All right, of course, we have the level of detail. I'm not going to activate the structures one because it was so slow with the webinar. I'm going to come back to master and activate that, and I won't be playing with that again. But we have those foundations in level of detail. We link them through, and if you look at the substation modeling strategy, you'll see how that can behave. Also in the structure, we can see we have a structure. The structure is here. It's made of simplified parts, actually. If you look in here, we have assemblies. If I expand my component pattern, you can see I have these as subassemblies in here. Of course, they're phantom subassemblies, so I can have all that information in the bill of material, but I have that assembly to keep my model as light as possible. Here's the other subassembly, and the other subassemblies are these guys here with all the bolting and pieces that we need in here. You can see the bolting up here. So we have that. When we're looking at this model, we can also look at items that are coming from the utility content. So the utility content hub, if you haven't seen it, so everyone has access to this who has our software that they can download parts or configurators as well. So in this model, we have quite a few of these pieces. This is utility content here. This bushing here is utility content. This fittings utility content. Coming down here, utility content, utility content. I think you get the drift here, what I'm trying to get at. Here's a little, I forget what it's called, but it's here as well. There's so many pieces, I forget what it's called. But you can see what's going on here. We have a lot of items on here. We want to try and populate this as much as possible. And I wanted to get this exercise of showing some above ground conduit runs. We have our device up here. We have some flex conduit running down from the device down to our elbow. And then we have some rigid metal conduit coming across. We have the ground wires coming from each one. And again, we're trying to replicate the actual image. So this is something of course, it opens on the other window. So, of course, this is something I worked on back in 2015, I believe it was, with Josh Clark. Josh Clark was going to be in the meeting today, but he had something else popped up at the end, so he wasn't going to be involved. But I'm trying to replicate this and get the idea that we can do this similar assembly in this complete of an assembly. And that's what we're doing here. I'm going to show you how to place the ground cable. Oh, this is utility content as well. I'm going to show you how we place the ground cable in the conduit. We come down here. This box is not in utility content. I actually pulled it off of Hammond. It's a Hammond box, and Hammond seems to have some really nice parts we can download. They're not large. If I highlight this and go into the properties, it's a very small 844, so it's a beautiful thing. So we come down here with the power, and we can come in here and we can open the door and take a look at what's inside. All right, so I added a little bit of wiring in there just so that we can see it. And I can close the door as well. You notice it slams shut. So it's not actually spring, but I set it up so that it's always placed perfectly. So we have this coming down here now. The reason I added the wiring in here and looking at this is Rainey Burnett of SBS. He was on me to do something like this. He wants to see it. And maybe we can go further with the wiring inside a box like this. I'm not sure what direction it's going to go, but we're going to have to do some trials with that. So I'm going to let the door slam shut, and away we go. And we have the detail up here as well of placing these pieces on. So that's what we're going to look at. First thing we want to look at is the grounding. Everything else is here is basically normal Inventor practice for assembly and things. We have the bolting on here. I use the Substation Design Suite tools to place that. It's using the Browse tool here or the Select tool next to it. I have the grounding here. The grounding is placed. The ground lug is placed using Substation Design Suite, as well as this bolting as well. And then we have the cable, and I've got to map this cable to the direction I want it to go. I want this cable looking for, the ground cable, the way I want it. So I am copying what was in that picture. So this ground cable runs from this device all the way down to this place here. This guy comes in, just has a short one, and this one has a long one. So I want to place this. I want to place it in a way that I can have it either above or around. You can see how it comes above the steel here, and then it drops down through here. We look at this side, the same similar thing. The ground cable is coming off the device through my junction here, but now it drops down, and we can see it coming down through the steel and coming down to the ground point down here. So we want to look at how do we run that. And I ran this cable two different ways. So on this side here, I ran the cable using the blow grade tools and the blow grade cable. So this blow grade cable, I can select points and work from there. So if I highlight that cable, I should come back up here. I'm hoping it all runs well with the webinar. There it is. So you can see I'm running it through points. You can run it through all kinds of different things. We'll look at this tool later again, because I'll use this tool later again. But in this case, we're just running it through points. I might have picked a cylindrical surface or whatnot, and I can run that cable through these points. I can shift where these points are, and I can add a point if I wanted to. So I can edit this guy and go from there. So on this side, I ran the cable just using the above grade tools, pick points to add cable. So what points? I don't see any points. So what points am I picking? So on the left side here, I'm going to go back to that one. We're going to look at this one. What this is doing here, I am picking, I'm going to collapse this and see what I see. I am coming through here, and I was working on this, so it's not quite organized the way I would prefer. And here I'm using Cable Path Tool Upper. So if I expand this, this is a part I put in, and I have work points all through here. You can see the work points here. Maybe I can highlight them all. Okay, so I'm coming in through and picking work points and passing through. I may have more work points than what I need. In this case, you can see I ignored some. I could always add them later. If I come down, and then the work points come down to the bottom, all the way down. And when I placed this one, I placed it as I typically would use this tool of work points. What I did on this side, I created a part, and I placed the part in using ground and root. And I create a part so I can take it out and can edit it easily, and I'm in a quiet model. I'm not inside of my model by placing my sketch inside the assembly. And I did what I typically do, dimension everything. And in doing this, I got, wow, this is busy. This is a little bit too busy for me to work with. I'm not, it's hard to make sense of it. I can also edit it inside of Inventor as well. I can edit while I'm in here as well. So that was the way I did it on that side. And I thought, well, I want to try something different. So this time I did something different. I'm going to minimize that, and I'm going to have this one. So I got Cable Path Tool Upper. So this is done with dimensions. Then Cable Tool Path Upper Loose. So this one I'm calling loose. Loose because I built this one differently. I'm going to open up this one. I don't have dimensions in here. I have work planes like I had on the other one, the height and height 2. So height 2 is below the top of steel, and height is the top of steel. Then I placed some sketch points in here to put my work points on. But you notice there's no dimensions. So I'm going to close this. Come in here. We're going to take this loose tool, and we're going to edit this tool. I'm going to hit edit. So now I'm loose here. I'm going to take my sketch. You can see my sketch highlights, this one. I'm going to right click and edit my sketch. So if I'm placing my wire, I'm going to place it about to where I want it, but maybe I want to change something. So I'm just going to move my sketch over here. I'll move the sketch up here, and I can go through and move those points. I can finish that sketch. And now my work points are different. I'll return, or I can right click and finish my edit. And now I can update my model. It doesn't show update, but those work points have now moved. Not sure if the Inventor is going to see the work points. They're there. Okay, so I moved a couple work points, and now I placed this cable by work points. And if you look at my fitting here, if I open this fitting, you'll see that there's a work point on either side, right? So when I'm coming through, I can pick that work point on either side. So that's how I'm coming through on some of these pieces, but also I'm going through the work points that are attached to that loose sketch. So we look here, now I move these because I just moved it because I want to tweak the look of that cable. I can come into my above grade tools, update cable, I can select that cable, and it's going to pass through those points now. So by adding them loose, I can just drag the work points, I can drag the sketch points around that the work points are attached, and the cable will move to what I want it to be. Of course, I have the length of that cable identified, and the rest is just picking points as it's going through pieces and coming along here. So some of these are just picking simple pieces. There's no magic to this one. This one down here is using that other tool. So I wanted to show that, and that's getting these work points in here. So I'm going to turn off the visibility of that guy. What we're looking at next is placing the conduit. You can see the conduit in here, and the conduit starting here and it's coming across. And when you look at the image as well, that's what I based how I placed the conduit. The conduit is rigid metal conduit, and it's coming across. And what I'm using is the flex tool. So if I come into my content editor in Substation Design Suite, the content editor, and go into flex conduit, I have rigid metal conduit down here. And this is what I'm using to place that, is the flex tool. This description, if I had is just RMC2, because that's all I care about right now. But if you have your description, you may want this not only in the flex tool, but maybe you want it also in the straight conduit lengths as well. So you have the same description, same part numbers. So either tool you use, you'll have all the same items in your bill of material. So that's what I'm using to place that. When you look at how this is placed, you can see these the fittings on the outside here. They are in space supported by the rigid metal conduit. So when we come in here, that's exactly what I have here. So first thing I did, I placed my fittings. And of course, I found the fitting down on utility content, brought it up, and now I've attached my fitting to it. What I also have is this assembly here. I'm going to find that in browser. I made this as a subassembly and make it easier to place. You can see I have my pieces here, utility content, utility content. This here, Unistrut, is in our training catalog, our training models that you can grab as well. This guy's on utility content as well. So we have these pieces here. So now it's just easy. I place this in line with this hole, work it out, and then away I go. And you can see it's coming across, coming down, and I'm running that. So to run that flex conduit, if I was to run it again, I can just come up to my low-grade tools, settings, conduit, RMC2. I don't care about the rest. It's flex conduit. I'll hit save. And what it would do is just continue. Well, why don't I make it RMC like large? And then I can always find it and delete it. Why don't we do that? Conduit, RMC large, what, about 4-inch, just for this example. Then I can start placing my flex conduit tool. I'm using the flex conduit tool, and I can come back here and I can start picking circular edges. So I'm just going to pick a circular edge, come out here, circular edge, come down here, circular edge, and so forth. You just go along like that, and you're going to have that piece of conduit there. All right. So I purposely made it big just so we can see it in the training, and I'll delete that piece now. Okay, so that's how we're placing these pieces. We're using the fittings. The fittings get placed first. We align our brace or our support pieces with the fitting to make sure we're in line. That fitting, if you look, isn't even touching the side of the steel. I don't know if I can get a good view of that. Let's come down here. 3D mice are great. But you can see the fitting is not touching the side of the steel because that's just the way it is. All right, the rigid conduit is supporting it. So you have enough of these support pieces to be able to support that. Then we come down and through here doing the same tool. So what I did next is I went in and I said, well, I have my conduit above, and I know Randy Burnett's been bugging me on showing some wiring inside. So that's what I wanted to look at next was, what am I going to do? What am I going to do here? So that's what I wanted to look at. So if I break this kind of thing, it will break and I can hold it open. So it's no longer a spring close. It will come back. And here I ran some cable in here. I made a diamond pattern inside of my box. If I look at my box here, You can see I made a diamond pattern of work points. Wasn't sure what it was going to look like. This is my first real stab at it. You can see I got a knockout there. I didn't actually put the holes in. I was just showing the knockout. And again, this is a Hammond box. They did a nice job of keeping the files small and being able to use it. So here I got my fitting in here coming in, and I have a wire inside here. So if we come in here and if I can show that wire, it's down here, SD cable runs. I come in here, open one of these. You can see the cable I have running inside that. So if I come up here, if we go into the drawing world, I still want time to talk with the other conduits. So I want to get this finished, but I want to make sure you see this. It's very easy to run the conduit inside. This ground clamp lost its bit. Here she is. So you can see you can see the wire. There's a cable inside. When we run the below grade cable tool, and this is the tool I use to run that, is here I used add conduit run. So you can add conduit run, and I can, if I were to pick that, I can run a conduit. I can run a cable just by selecting the conduit pieces. So I could come up here, I can select this conduit piece. It's not going to highlight well in this. I'm going to select this run and come through there. So if let's go, oh, I know what I can do. I can go to view and go to wireframe. All right. So here we're going to look at a conduit run. You can see that conduit run. It's kind of hard to see probably, but you can see the light blue over the top running on where I want it. Here's another conduit run. So now you can see the red and the blue. And it's always going to run it down the center. That's the way SDS is right now. It's going to run it down the center, but I can see that cable in there, right? So it's coming down, all goes down to the center. And when I came out here, this is why I put that diamond shape in here to show that it's coming out at 3 different areas. Could I have done this earlier? Sure, I could have picked back in here, right, and showed it coming out that way. But that's just something we can do now without any real difficulty in running these conduits. It's going to find itself through there. By the way, these elbows are solid. I don't really care what it looks like inside. I can see through here. It's just picking the conduit run up here and the conduit run here. And SDS does this curve for me, so I don't have to do anything really special to shape this coming through. You can see it's a little bit low here, but it's adequate for what we see. We're not going to see that through the image or in the drawing, and it's not going to affect the length. So that's just running that type of stuff. So you can run as many conduit cables inside that conduit run. The only issue, again, is it's going to run it down the center. So that's why this is going here. If you look at the cutaway here, this one, FF, so I cut FF, so I got the cable running through this one, and I got a cable running through this one. So there's 2 cables in this piece of conduit here. And when you look at FF, you can see that you only see the 1 cable in FF, right? You only see the 1 cable there. So you're only going to see the one. They're all running down the center, but maybe in the future we can do something with that more precise, but that's the way we can have it. If you look at the model here too, is that we did this large assembly, island subassembly, and we look at this model, you know, to do it detailed like this is a lot easier than that old method of detailing the entire bay and trying to put 400 balloons in an entire bay and identifying things. This makes it so much easier to have dedicated drawings for the islands that at construction, the constructors can look at it. They can look at your elevation view, and you identify the island in the elevation view. That's all you need to do, other than the interconnecting cables. But you identify the island. They can look up the island in the drawings, and they can have the heavily detailed, however much detail they'd ever need in here and have a very clear understanding what that island's going to look like. Again, 137 components in here. Some are used multiple times. So the total BOM is 69 items in here. So that's a lot of items, and you can't add 69 balloons to one island in elevation. No one will understand your drawing with so many balloons. So I think this is a nice way to do it. The other thing I'm doing here, I have a new document I'm working on, is this type of idea, these types of thought. Instead of coming on with an item number on here, again, the old way, you want an item number because you don't have enough room to add those 400 balloons. Here we can add the actual part number in the balloon. So the balloon style here, come over to annotate. I want a balloon. I want to use my line balloon. This is edited and made, and there's my line balloon. So it's 121.15. So I look up 121.5. Here it is here. I don't need the item number. I left them on for, I don't know, for old memory's sake. And you can see 120.15. I can sort this on part number as well. It's however you want to do it. But you can see the 120.15 there. And you can also add other text and behave like other balloons. If I wanted the balloon here, I can also do the hexagon balloon. If I wanted to come off here, right? And that's the part number as well. So there's different ways of doing that. I'm just showing you different ways. I really like this method. I don't have to worry about balloon numbers. I have the part. And people who are experienced in their company, they know what that part number is. I remember when I worked with the EPC I worked at, I probably had several hundred part numbers memorized that I could just look at the part number. I knew what it was. That's not a good part number. So I'm going to move on to the other one, to the other example. I'm going to shut this door. It's going to get wet. There it is. You see how nice tag plates on here. Isn't that beautiful? Okay, so I'm going to shut this down, and we will have a Q&A afterwards. So we're going to look at the below-grade cable runs, below-grade conduit runs. Okay, so this is where I talked to Josh Clark a little bit on, and I talk to others on conduit. When I do training, I ask people, I try and get them prompted to talk to me about what their experience with conduit is. I talk to other people I work with, customers, on what they're looking at with conduit. Some people tell me whatever they draw in the model, whatever's in the model is exactly what the constructors do, right? Some people tell me, well, we only want approximation in the model. We can't control what the constructors do for a conduit. There's too many variables. I don't know how each company is going to do their conduit. So in this case, I'm kind of doing a realistic conduit placement on one side, and I left it as a conservative conduit placement for BOM quantities. So I have two different types I'm working with, and this is what I was talking to Josh about, this type of thing. When we look at those images, and these images are in the handout, so I'm going to bring up these images. All right. So here, I wanted to mention this here. You can see this one here. If I bring this guy up, this is back to the above grade conduit. This is flex conduit being placed in here as well. So it's rigid metal conduit, but we're bending it to place. Here, down here, we're doing the same thing, placing the elbows in the fittings, and then we're just running flex conduit from one to the other. It's very easy to do that. I think some people are using flex conduit almost everywhere instead of our other conduit methods that you'll see in the link in the handout. So I just wanted to point that out here because I really like this little island subassembly. I think it's a real nice one. Shows a lot of things in here. But when we're looking at conduit, when we look at this, you can see that what actually happens in the conduit is they'll dig a shallower trench. They don't dig a really deep trench or lay it all in. This could be 3 inches or 4 inches round. It's about that size, it looks like to me. and they're bending it. Either they heat it to bend or just the PVC is allowed to bend this way. We look at other things in here. Look at this guy here. You can see the bending, the laying on top of one another, just coming in. It's hard to see, but it doesn't even look like there's an elbow here, right? So they're bending it in and coming out. The only elbow they have is the looks like a metal elbow coming up. There's a number of companies that I'm being told that they use steel coming out of the ground. I think PPL is the one of them from Josh Clark. But you can see this type of work being done. So we want to model it. Actually, that's the question. Do we want to model it kind of realistic to what we think they're going to model or install or construct? Or do we want to model it more, a little bit different, more conservative? I want to go through, take a look at another one. When we look at this one, I don't know why it's so small because it's pretty good resolution, even larger. But you can see when they come into a building, they dig out the whole area and then they come down. So again, it's shallow, it's flat. This is stacked, so I believe they have some stacking tools in here to put in. So you can see there's fixed pieces, fixed elbow, all placed in the same thing. And this is what we're going to see when we look at our model here. So let's go back into the model. And I'm talking a realistic conduit placement here. So in this case, I have my conduit runs here. I am using the steel pieces here. Let's go into part priority. I got my pieces coming in here, not necessarily steel, but they're bending up and I'm using the elbows. So where it's deep enough to use an elbow, I'm going to use my elbow. When it's a little bit shallow, I'm going to think they're going to dig it out and place it accordingly. So again, we're back into that image, right? You can see how it's dug out. They're going to put the elbow in and wherever it is. So if I can come in fairly straight, I'm going to come in fairly straight. And we come down here, and I'm thinking they're going to bend it, just like what we were showing in that image. This image here, they're going to bend it, lay it on top, whatever mess it's going to be, and then they're going to come down into here. So if you look at this one, it's 3 across, 2 deep. I come over to this one over here. It's 2 across and 3 deep. So this is the change. This often happens. This is almost normal. And then if you're going to connect to here, you're going to dig it back or dig the earth around it bigger than what the box is before you put the conduit in. So you're able to place that in. So what I did to place that in, it's using the Flex Conduit Run again, and it's also using normal Inventor procedures. So this piece here, this is a Flex Conduit Run. These here are not. So if I'm running Flex Conduit, we're going to look into, let's find this in the browser. Oh, there it is. So I am going to look at Conduit Path. So I made a Conduit Path for a Flex Conduit to run. So I'm going to open this up. So here's my Conduit Path. If you look up here, what I got is a sketch. So it created a spline at the elevation I want it at. So the main conduit is running at that elevation. We go back to our image. You can see it's all running at an elevation coming in, and then it comes down to when it comes into the concrete, right? So it's that type of idea here. So I'm running along that elevation. So imagining that 6 feet away from my pull box, this is projected edges, so I know where my pull box is. 6 feet away is where they might dig it out, and again on the other side, it's about 6 feet away. D6 equals D5, of course, and it has that. And what I have in here, I have to attach my flex conduit to a circular edge. So if I come in here, I got a double pattern. So this pattern here, if I edit this pattern, let's come into edit feature. This pattern is identical and by direction. I want my little part here. I just made this little cylinder part, this little extrusion, to bend along my spline. So I created my spline, and if we travel along here, you can see these guys coming across. and now it's turning along my spline. See, it's coming along my spline, it's turning. So you're able to do that with normal Inventor practice, and now it's straightening out again. And that's what I'm using to place my conduit. So when I place my cylindrical conduit, I pick those cylindrical edges from where I want to start. Well, I want to start on this flex conduit from my elbow, right? So I'm going to start this one from the elbow. Because this one's going to be bent or pushed, heated, whatever it's done, I'm going to start it from the pull box itself. I'm going to bring it out. So that's the method I'm using here. All of this is going to have the same BOM information because I'm coming into my Substation Design BOM tool, and my flex conduit description is going to be same as my straight conduit descriptions in here. So I'm going to have that in my BOM correctly. So I have my pieces in here, and I can run it this way. So in talking with others, like Josh, he mentioned, well, they may want to do it this way. So in this way, I use the traditional type of conduit that we have using the below grade tools and the drop plus path or my auto route path only, where I create a path and I follow that path. And here you can see I just follow that path. So when I do that, it places parts in it. So now it's picking elbows. You can see it's stacked. Would they really do it this way? Would it be stacked the whole way? I don't think so. I think they would, in actuality, they'll do it the other way. But in talking with Josh, we're not sure. At times they may have spacers in here. We don't know when they are. It's going to be dependent on your company on how that is done. So now I'm going to have all my bill of material to include all of these elbows. So when it goes to site, we're packaging a whole whack of elbows. Whatever elbows they don't use, I guess they can return. They can go down to Home Depot, I'm sure. But I'm joking. But you know, that way they have the material there, because we don't really know what material there is. Here I'm showing, I think, really more like what they would be doing at site, but I'm not going to have those elbow fittings in case they need them. Or maybe we can set it up so that we do it the way a practical, realistic way of doing it, and we add spare elbows, so many elbows per feet for unknowns. This way you're including them in the drawing and coming in here. No matter what, when I get down to the pull box here, this arrangement is different than this arrangement, right? Again, this is 2 wide, 3 deep, and this one is 3 wide, 2 deep. So now I still have to use my flex conduit to bring it in here. I'm flex conduit tool. The actual bill of material is going to show this as rigid PVC that is either bent, well, it would be bent to fit in there. And it's not bent that much. And if you think this is going to be dug out a ways, the spacing could be different down at the bottom. That's wider, and away we go. Same thing up here. When we look at this run up here, what I did, I came down to the, what is that called again? Transformer. When I came down to the transformer, you can see I made all my guys are flat. So I got the expansion stub out here. That's all flat, all on the same elevation, the depth. And I stub out, and now I come down here. So this is just running the normal drop plus path or the auto route. And now I'm using the flex conduit to bend it in to the foundation here. Again, this foundation is going to be dug out maybe 6 feet, so they would bend it in here. If we look on the other side, this is what we're talking about again here. I'm sorry that this is broken. I made this model in 2016, and I don't know what happened. I didn't want to remodel it. But you can see it's coming out here. We have the elbows. So this is all going to be caught in the BOM with extra elbows, and we're stacked coming in here. So it's going to be dependent. You can see the future stub out here is also stacked. It's going to be dependent on how you guys do it at your company, right? I don't know how you guys are going to do it at your company. Here again, I did it as well. I bent it coming out of the foundation here, came down here and made it flat at all single elevation, all the way down to where I have to pull it into where my power's coming in. All right. So that in this one is stacked, doing it the opposite way or the different way, where I'm using the normal tools. This could be done flat with the normal tools too. Don't get me wrong. It's just which way do you want? Is it a realistic placement or a conservative placement for bomb quantities? When we get down here, this is like I said, I did this a number of years ago. So this items here, I placed them in here. There's only one sketch along the top. I always forget where this is. You can see it has concrete on the walls, but nothing else. I think this is filled with a slurry as well. So where's Find in Browser? Let's open that up. So here's what I'm running here. I have my sketches in here, so I can do things. Here's my sketch here for the runs. I'm using auto route. I'm using the auto route path only and at different depths. So I have a different depths. So I have my depths that coming in to meet here. And I remember when I did this, I had to calculate it, what depth it was going to be, because I wanted it to show it at the bottom of these supports. This is actual supports that they purchased. And I just patterned this through what the support spacing. We look at the sketch here. You can see how that sketch ends, where that comes out, where the branch is. So I'm just running auto route, and then I'm physically placing normal Inventor procedures to place the elbow in here. And then I have another sketch somewhere here to come out here, and that's coming into my foundation. So I'm showing you several ways of doing this. I'm not sure which is the right way. The right way is going to be the way you guys do it for your company. But I wanted to share that with you. There's a couple things going on here that I think are pretty cool. I think this is realistic. I like doing this style myself. This style makes sense to me, but you may want to do it with elbows and fittings in case they need those at site. So those are the two items I wanted to bring up. So one was the above grade conduit with the conduit runs, the cable runs, electrical box. Then we had the grounding wire with the loose tool and the other tool. Just different ways of doing it. Remember, this is being recorded. We're open to questions. So if you have any questions, we can review it. I can reopen a model. Yes, I would like to see point to point. Jeff Black had a question. Have you thought about point to point runs for flex conduit similar to the conductor? I would like exactly that we can pick either a circular point, a circular edge, or a point in the same run. That would be really nice. The below grade cable tool does things like that. Maybe not go to this extent of things, but maybe something like that. So there is a betterment or enhancement written in our artifacts that might come out in a couple releases, 3 releases, 2 releases. I don't know, but that would be nice to do. Can the Flex Conduit tool populate from a projected 3D sketch? I tried that and it did not work. It seems to want a solid edge. Again, if we could pick a surface, a cylindrical surface, cylindrical solid, WorkPoint, that would be great. The cable path tool, that is a IPT. All I'm doing is placing that cable path tool into the model. So it's an IPT part, and I place it in the model, then I attach that part to the model using ground and root tool. So when I'm placing things in, I often use the ground and root tool. I often use the ground and root tool here. And this will ground and root the part. How do you handle conduit fill? Well, conduit fill now, like we had tools in SDS for physical, for Inventor, for conduit fill, and it was all manual. And a lot of people weren't willing to use it or wanting to use it. So conduit fill is really handled by the cable list in the SDS PNC product, the protection control product with AutoCAD Electrical. So we're able to create paths and tell AutoCAD Electrical where the cable is, what conduit's in, and then when they do the cable path or the cable list, they're able to identify where that cable is. So there's some new tools in there, came out about a year and a half ago or more, and they're able to do that. It actually paths things through the substation, kind of like your phone gives you a path to 7-Eleven. You know, you want to go to 7-Eleven for a super gulp, you can go in there and put in, I want super gulp at 7-Eleven. Your phone's going to tell you how far away, where you turn, and such as that. So we're able to do something similar by putting WorkPoints in our station and be able to run those paths. If we know where that path is, we know where it's running in the trench or the conduit, and we know how many cables could be in that conduit. The slope calc's integrated into the tool. There is a sloping webinar. I'd recommend you to watch it. Most of the tools are, like the conduit tools and that, are designed for non-sloping. It doesn't mean you can't do slope. It's just the matter of way you handle the tools. There is a sloping webinar. You'd have to look for it, or if you remind me, send me an email. I'll send you a link to the sloping webinar. We can talk about that separately. Sometimes we would have a ground grid element run towards a foundation in its path. And I've tried using the spline and the ground grid sketch curve around the foundation, but it would not recognize it. So spline, no, but it will recognize a radius. So if I come into, this is right in our e-learning, just make sure I have the right. So if you come in the e-learning, I'll show you a picture of that. You have to use a radius. So you draw your lines and create a radius instead of a spline. So if I come into the grounding here. So if you use a radius, you draw your line and draw a radius in here, it will do this type of thing. Being able to select work in geometry, how the below grade tool works. If that functionality is available for conduit and above grade cable bus, that would be awesome. Can you show item number and part number on the line balloon? So yes, you could. There's a couple ways to do it. You can combine, now I don't want to combine it. You would create if I come into drawing world, you know, in the end, what we need is a good bill of material with great drawings. It's always good to look at what you can do in the drawing world to get your point across so it's easy to understood for construction, because that is our end product. Our product isn't always the 3D model. So when you come into manage here, although we can leverage the 3D model for a lot of things, styles editor, balloons, right? So if I have a balloon, I'd have to create a user-defined symbol to do that, to have both the item number and the part number in the line balloon. I'd have to do that type of thing. You can see in here, you can have double part number and quantity here, so I would just change that to whatever, but I would want to create a user-defined symbol to do that. That would take a little trial and error to do. Is the Inventor model you are using to present today available to play with? If you want Inventor models to play with, I'd recommend coming into our site. This is why we put them there. There's some download areas. Come into our site. You should have a password. If your email does not work, you don't know your password, just say you forgot your password. It will send you a password. If you're in our list, if you have our software, you will be in our list. Come into Sport Portal, Downloads, Substation Design, Inventor, Download, and you have some models here you can play with. You can put them in your sandbox and go to town with them. You can download them here and you can play with those. So I'm hoping in the future I'll be able to work with Randy Burnett and do a little bit more work with this. I think it's going to be cool what we can do. And I want it to slam shut on purpose, and then I got to break it to stay open. I think we can do a lot more here. Randy has some ideas on wiring inside there. I think it'd be cool. No, the ACAD wire harness tool used to wire the panel. No, but that's what I want to get into. I want to be able to. Randy has more thoughts on it than I do, but I think it's a doable item. And that's what I'm talking about. I think we'll be able to do something here. I just use Substation Design Suite, physical for Inventor to place some cables in here because it's kind of dumb. It's not a real thing, but I put some pieces in there just to tease and get that thought going on what we want to do with that. So I'm going to shut that door, and away we go. That door opens and closes for those who care. It's using it's a little bit of work. I had some trial and error, but if you look at I just closed it here. If you look at here, it's you got these pistons in the image, so that means it is a flexible assembly. So what makes it what is flexible is that door to swing open. Are there conduit spacers placed with regular interval tool? Conduit spaces, the conduit spacers in this one, I take it you're speaking of this, are just manually placed using the array tool, right? So if I come into here, there's going to be an array of those spacers. This one here probably. I've done spacers different ways too. I've done spacers. I've done it built into the sketch tool here. I put spacers in this tool here one time, but that's spacers for trench, and I put them in there so we had spacers in the trench. I'm not sure if that was a good method, but it did work. But it was quite a trial and error. So thanks for all coming out, and we'll have another webinar maybe in 2 months.